Hello, everyone. I have some news before we get into this episode, which is honestly almost entirely about The Boys Season 3. No spoilers, but very proud of how much we stayed on track. Playwatch Listen has been running for almost 3 years now, and the whole time we have been completely non-profit and sponsor-free. Any money that the show makes on YouTube has gone towards merch or the animations that I've made or to paying the editor. I think I'm actually backwards in terms of money and also hosting and all that. And that's fine. That is not going to change. We are not going to change the show and start doing sponsored ad reads or anything like that, despite getting offered, honestly, every week. We will not be doing that. However, we did want to start doing some more creative stuff, if possible. I'm going to start small with that, and it would be more of the animated shorts animated by Matt Ringstead. We've done 2 so far, but I'd love to ramp it up to maybe do 1 a month even. The audience seems to really like them. We really enjoy them. And if I can spend money to help an animator or an artist, that seems like a great way to spend money. So that's the goal. But we also, have toyed with doing some more creative stuff on the show before. Things like game jams, potentially. Maybe we make a game, some kind of narrative stuff that we'd have loose conversations about. We would like to take the group and do some things that are a little bit bigger. I don't want to promise anything just yet. But that is the goal. And I figured, because of the way that Playwatch Listen operates, a great way to offer that would be through Patreon. What that means is actually nothing is going to change. You will get a mention of Patreon at the start of episodes, and we'll put some names on screen to thank people at the end of episodes. But the show is not going to be sponsored. Ad stuff is not going to happen. None of that. People on Patreon will get the show early and technically YouTube ad-free. But that's it. The show is going to remain the same. The idea is just that if the community wants to support Playwatch Listen, they can do that, and we can respond to the amount of community feedback there is on that and then make more creative stuff. So if you would like to support Playwatch Listen on Patreon, I'll leave a link in the description to where you can do that. Any amount of money helps, obviously, and it is completely not profit. Nobody's getting paid. All money would go towards creating more merch, because we don't have a ton, and maybe putting it on a different website, a more effective website than Redbubble, to more of the animated versions of the show, and to potentially some more creative projects. For a very long time, I've wanted to have an excuse to get the boys together to actually do like a live stream together or something like that. So that's it, basically. If you want to help out, you can. If not, nothing should change for you at all. But it seems like a great way for us to be able to do this without having to put any sponsored ad reads or whatever into the podcast. So we can keep it the way that it is, never have to worry about pleasing anybody, except, I guess, Patreon supporters. I will also leave an opportunity for people to ask questions on Patreon for episodes as well, which is not something that we usually do otherwise. So I'm very excited about it. I'm excited about the potential to make more stuff. I love it being community funded because it feels like the community is making more stuff. But of course, absolutely no pressure. You will lose absolutely nothing if you don't sign up to the Patreon. But if you do, thank you. We appreciate you. Let's make some cool stuff. And now to the episode.
Did you have like guests? Is your mom in town or something? What's going on? Austin Wintory.
Based on what?
Your office is like not in a shambles.
Yeah, I guess
There's also a plane overhead from the sounds of it.
I think that's like a lawnmower or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's Tony outside doing his shit.
Yeah, that you are in a tidy space. I've got a bag empty, open and empty, like thrown aside next to me. But you have like a pristine situation going on.
I had some meetings here a few weeks ago. Yeah, exactly. I had some meetings with my parole officer, and I wanted to make a good impression. So
now I pressed record on my audio.
Good, me too.
This is the content, guys. We're in it.
We're doing it. It's a boys episode, guys. Get ready.
Yeah, theoretically.
We're talking about the boys.
Oh man,
I haven't started yet. I'm saving that for a plane. We're already on a tangent. I started because of my dear friend Austin.
I
started
good.
The Offer and finished it summarily within a matter of 3 days.
Yeah,
you watched it, Mike?
Is that the Godfather one?
Yes.
I've been meaning to get to it. Yeah, I've not started it yet. Is it good?
Yeah. Mean to now.
Yeah.
It didn't get anything for the nominations, did it?
You're right. I didn't.
I stopped reading when Love, Death, and Robots got nominated. Sorry, but again. Not my episode, by the way.
Did your episode didn't?
No. Oh. Jabaro. Hey.
How's the Finch taking it? Finchmeister General.
Sure.
He's crying. Yeah.
No. You ask him, David? in the shower.
Keep him busy there.
If you haven't watched, I mean, I think our episode was all of them are great. I think our episode was incredible. If I was on a committee and needed to nominate one episode from that season, Jabaro to me is the standout one that best represents everything that I think Tim Miller and the showrunners are and even Venture are trying to accomplish, which is how can we most beautifully and poetically tell a story within this medium, and it does that. And it just does it in such a way that it shows it's not about dialogue. It's not about. Sometimes it is, but there's just so much that can be said without a single word spoken. And it does a great job of doing that, especially when that's baked into the conceit. You haven't watched it, you should.
It's so good. Just watched it again the other night, and it's there's just so much. I agree. Bad Traveling is amazing, but Jabaro is one of those where what's so great about it is it's something that could probably only exist in that format. It probably only makes sense as an episode of Love, Death, Robots. Like you wouldn't want a feature version of that. I think you wouldn't want a live action version of that. Like it's all it's nestled perfectly into the medium that it was created for,
intended for. Yeah.
And I think
even though the story was not intended for that, that's what's so fascinating to me. It's all adapted material. So I would.
Just comes together so incredibly.
Yeah. I really want to go back and read the all the source material for everything that he finds, or whether it be short stories or whatever. Or just it's inspiring to go back and to read. Bad Traveling included.
That one I could see as a feature, as like a kind of cool monster meets Master and Commander.
I mean, there's so much that we could do.
Little shop of horrors, but very, very serious.
Yeah, it could be really cool to get into it.
Not only that, but I think the thing that puts the tension is the relationship with the crew, and I think establishing we never shot with our captain. Our captain was just kind of like she's there for one line, but establishing how the crew comes together, who the crew is. You could go in and just have episodes about each one because they're all incredibly dense characters that you get to see just a little bit of. And then, of course, finding out more about my character.
Yes, indeed.
But The Offer, man, Mike, it's
so validating that you've taken to it so much.
It's very my kind of thing. Yeah, I will love that show. I've been meaning to get to it. It's on Paramount Plus, right?
Yeah, I think now it's on Netflix. Check in the UK because I think it may be on Netflix now, where you guys are. But one of your countrymen, Matthew Good, just fucking slays. He's one. Matthew?
He's in the shower with Fincher.
Yeah. He does so good as Bob Evans. I can't believe it, babe. He just does an incredible job of everything he wants to do. I mean, he is just crushing it as Bob Evans. If you've never seen The Kid Stays in the Picture, and I would highly recommend watching it rather than reading the book.
There's an audiobook, isn't there, that he recorded?
Well, he did the narration for the movie as well.
But I thought that was actually that was not recorded for the movie. I thought that was extracted from the audiobook.
That's
I'm
very
going
possible.
to audible.com and I'm going to
That's very possible. The book is far more exhaustive.
Because I side on the Marcus Aurelius that you recommended.
So you know what? I should be getting. There's I got to show you this too if I can reach it.
It stays in the picture.
Can I plug my buddy's book?
Do it.
So Donald Robertson, who wrote How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, which was recommended to me by my buddy Jack Septiceye, and I plowed through his book. I did the audiobook. I started reading and then I actually switched to the audiobook because I wanted to hear it from him. And he's got this lovely, just Scottish brogue accent that just everything he says has more weight to it somehow. But he and I kind of developed a bit of a friendship, and he said, I'm thinking about doing a graphic novel. I was like, let's go. What's it about? He was like, I want to do the story of Marcus Aurelius as a graphic novel. And so he, over like 4 years, he got this Portuguese artist, Zenugo Fraga.
That's long. That's a tome right there.
It is not small. And it's like,
yeah, I didn't realize that was a graphic novel when you held it up. That's quite something.
Yeah, it's amazing, dude. and it tells the story of Marcus Aurelius in a very, very unique, interesting way, and it makes it so much more. He contextualizes everything, so it's not just like, oh, I'm just pontificating and spouting off philosophy, but it's like I'm sitting here on the banks of the river as I just watched 10,000 of my men die, and these are the thoughts that I have, and so it paints that picture. So it's really.
Well, he often is cast as the secondary character to his son as well, right? In a lot of
Commodus?
like retellings of that story, it's it's cool to
Commodus
see him as like the main character. Commodus is the more interesting, dramatic character.
Yeah, because everybody wants to watch him fail, but I mean, Marcus Aurelius is the one where everyone wept for days after he died. He's just like.
Sure.
He's so cool. So yeah, Verissimus is the name of it, and he's worthy of all adulation and purchase. And the art is really, really cool.
Nice.
So anyway,
well, one of the things that I love about The Offer has been that at the end, I've watched 9 of the 10, and actually, funny enough, last night I got to the end of 9. And I thought the series was over. It was actually, It was such a poetic place to end that I thought I said, I'm pretty certain there are 10, but that felt like the end in a very interesting, even though that there's more story to tell, like that, just from a sheer historical standpoint that they're not to the end of the story.
I can see episode 10 being a prologue. Or an epilogue, rather. I could see that.
But yeah, it's so I've really, really fallen in love with it. It was one of those that I first heard about it because a handful of friends of mine have like little bit parts through it. So I kept hearing about it through the lens of like, oh, I'm in town shooting. I have a day in town shooting on this thing, The Offer. I kept hearing about it, and it was always just The Offer, The Offer, The Offer. And then at some point, someone said, The Godfather show, and I thought, is that what that is? That feels like that. I had a very different thing in my head this whole time, and I remember a friend of mine. I asked him, so how did they went to the premiere, whenever it first came out. They screened, I guess, the first episode or whatever, and I said, so what's your take? You think it's going to go over well? And he goes, I bet critics are going to look down on it as very kind of poppy, but audiences are going to love it. And
poppy?
I don't remember if that's the word he used, but it's like a very rose-colored lens. It's not like this gritty, nail, like dirt under the fingernails kind of show. Everything has a little bit of a sheen to it, even at its most.
Sounds a bit like Get Shorty, which was also excellent. The kind of that slightly goes down easy, like a nice easy kind of show.
Get Shorty is the conceit of that is a little bit more kind of like it's a true story, but it's like get this, what happens when this guy tries to make a film. But I still think there was a lot of grit. I would say that to every whatever. First of all, it's a very approachable story. You don't need to know anything about The Godfather. If you do, it hits on a totally other level. Right. To where you can appreciate like, holy shit, I know what scene they're shooting, and when they pan out and they show the why, and you're like, I know what location you're on.
Well, and to that end, one little detail that I so love is that they've got all these actors who are having to play these iconic, like
Pacino,
Brando, Pacino,
shit.
So it's actually about the production. So I assumed it was about like the pre-production kind of. They're actually like showing the making.
I mean, it's 10 hours. It's 10 hours, so it starts with the novel and it goes
from concept to filming and
release all the way through. So it's self-contained, so it's not. There's not going to be season 2 then. I guess
it's a limited.
It's a contained. I love that. that at this point, honestly, that makes me more likely to watch a TV show if I know.
There's a finite end.
Preach.
I'm the same exact way. I was like, I don't know if I can invest 8 years of my life into something again.
It gets good in season 3.
That's the But what I was to say is because the show is like they've got all these real people and like such good casting for capturing these real people of Coppola and it just goes on and on and on.
Dan Fogler as Coppola.
It's amazing.
I found out, I was like, I think I had his number at one point. And so I texted him and I was like, I'm fucking gobsmacked at your performance, dude. It is transformative. He is not doing a bit. Coppola shines through and he is standout character. Standout character.
Among many. That's the thing that's so remarkable about it is there's a lot of real highlights. And the fact that all these are real people and there's a real burden to try to capture them faithfully. I really love Coppola's vibe on the show, how he's very kind of annoying. He's got a little bit of a spoiled child aspect of like, I want my movie this way. And if they're like, well, you're going to have to compromise on this one little thing. And he's like, no, but he's also genuinely, he doesn't come across like this curmudgeon or anything. He comes across as like genuinely so excited and passionate. And when they see like a location for the first time and he goes, oh my God, what if we did this? And we did this. And you see that I get such a contact high from people that are that jazzed about what they're doing and about the industry they work in and all that kind of stuff. To me, it's just a wash in that passion. And the kind of another aspect that I really, really love is the fact that they're shooting The Godfather and they have all these actors portraying these iconic actors, but because there's like only so far they're willing to kind of create an alternate universe. They're not making the show's version of The Godfather. They're making The Godfather we've seen, which means that one of the tricks they do that I love is every time they're like watching the scene or watching, all you see is the reaction of the crew. You never show like, this is the delivery of
reenactments.
That famous. Yeah, there's no reenactments of the movie itself.
That's a smart way of doing that.
Right? My favorite one, by the way, and this is not a spoiler. If you've seen Godfather, you see it. Is the scene where they beat up Carlo. That to me was
with Jimmy Caan.
Amazing, and it's
rest in peace, right?
He died literally.
Man.
He died. I saw the notification of his death like an hour after watching that episode.
Really?
It was. The next morning or whatever.
That was a good day.
Yeah. So good.
What's fascinating to me is I love learning about the industry in which I work. Right. So to realize that there was a time when Coppola's name was a blemish upon your project and not a bolster. To realize that Jimmy Caan was the one that had the real star value, not Duvall, certainly not Pacino, and Brando. I've heard this story from Coppola's mouth about Brando having to put up $1 million bond. He had to work for scale, and he had to audition. So there's a lot of different versions of same stories that I've heard, and like the dramatization of those moments was really, really cool. But to anybody who wants to operate in this industry on any level, because it talks about the crew, the producers, the writers, the actors, everybody, it should be, Kid Stays in the Picture, I've talked about this one before, should be required reading, viewing, or listening. Play, watch, or listen.
Play The Kid Stays in the Picture.
Play the Kid Stays in the Picture.
Up and Atom.
Hey Siri.
The Kid Stays in the Picture.
Up and Atom. And this movie as well, it's just to remember that, man, it's so, the tension exists only because we know that The Godfather is arguably the greatest movie of all time, if not one of. To realize that there was a time when they had to sell that notion, and how many opportunities there are to
right up until it was picture locked. I mean, they were sorry to just jump in on the point you're making, but I feel so strongly the same way about it, that there's this perception, I think, that filmmaking is, very glamorous and very, kind of posh, and that there's a very kind of, I don't know if easy is the right word, but it's like, of all the things, even people in the industry will go, like, who am I to complain? Some people have real problems, or some people have real jobs and that kind of thing. And what I love about this show, and there's an aspect of that I fully agree with. I mean, it's not the same as, working in a coal mine, and no one would dispute that. But one of the things that I love is that the show does such a good job, because the whole thing is done through the eyes of Al Ruddy, the producer who gets this thing off the ground. And it just makes you realize that even for a movie that turns out as one of the greatest ever made, all movies, it's by the skin of their teeth, and that every single day there's 10,000 fires that have to be put out, and it's basically a continuous nightmare. And this show does such a good job at showing just like the comedy of errors that is all filmmaking and game design and television production. And season 2 of The Offer should probably be about the making of The Offer, where you realize They probably had all the same fucking hard challenges and everything just to make this show about The Godfather.
By the skin of their teeth, and no one knows you're building the road as you're driving at breakneck speeds down it. You know that, Mike.
Yeah, well, totally. We work backwards, right, in terms of our assumptions. We always assume, it's exactly what we're saying, we always assume that, The Godfather was obviously objectively brilliant, therefore everyone along the process must have known, and everyone must have had the resources. Yeah, it's true of games as well. There was I can't remember if it was a joke I was hearing in private or if it was something that went around Twitter, but this idea that most great game design happens in the 2 weeks you're planning your GDC talk. Because effectively, you do the thing, it goes so well.
Funny.
Guys, I think I just figured out what game we're making.
It's that though, right? There is those, and there are those moments of epiphany when you're making anything. We're on the thing we're working on at the moment. We're starting to hit that phase where we're starting to have these moments of that's going to look really clever. The thing we just did by accident, the thing that is an outcome of pragmatism and luck, basically, is that almost looks like an adult thought it through before we started. That's amazing. And you kind of stack enough of those up and you've got a video game, right? So yeah,
I don't want to misquote Amy, but we were at DICE one year and she said something to the effect of, I don't think there's ever been anyone that has ever shipped a game that they were happy with.
God, no.
It's always broken right up to the point.
People who make bad games. People who make bad games are often very proud of them, I've found.
All right. We fucking did it, guys.
What's this one called? We're great. We're so smart.
Binary Domain. Nailed it.
Binary Domain was a fucking classic and you need to show respect.
No, it's not. It is not a classic. Try to find it right now. I dare you. They burned the copies.
There's many classics that are hard to get a hold of.
They destroyed that as many copies of that game as they did the robots in the game.
There's plenty of classics that you can't get anymore.
I think the only person I can think of whoever was like, my game is amazing, and then I play it and I'm like, honestly, it actually is pretty amazing, is Joseph Ferris.
Which one? It Takes Two or...
Well, actually, I guess you're right. I guess his big moment was for A Way Out, I think.
That's his big life, though, right?
I don't think his first one... I mean, A Way Out was not the big one. It was definitely It Takes Two. A Way Out was just
No, but I'm saying the one that he gave the big speech about how it's the most brilliant game ever was, I think, A Way Out, right?
It was the Way Out one. That was on Keeley's thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So Alanah just showed up
profanity-laden...
Yeah. Fuck the Oscars. That was quite a moment.
But hey, man, way to make yourself an iconoclast, and way to make yourself a.
There we go.
I don't think there's anything wrong. Just press record. I don't think there's anything wrong with.
Quick, put the video on. Quick.
Yeah.
We did a video.
No.
Start recording video.
No, we did it. Just let me press record on the audio real quick.
Actually, you know what's so funny? There was no phantom power going to my mic for the first maybe 10 minutes. So you got Zoom audio for the first few minutes and just an empty audio file until I realized, oh shit, and I clicked on my mic.
It happens. It's all right.
No, it doesn't. I'm always perfect.
I think
this show is too popular for us to continue to make these kind of mistakes.
Let's bring you up to speed real quick.
Alanah.
Anybody?
Yep. What's up?
David Fincher's in the shower.
Okay.
With who was he in there with? Matthew Good. And who I did not know was British until I watched the behind the scenes.
Exeter. Of course, everything he says.
Yeah, well, because he's putting on such a voice that I had no. It just didn't. It just felt.
Some of the best American actors are British. That's been my
Australians
100%.
too. Homelander, dude's Australian.
New Zealand. Someone corrected me on that earlier, very very sternly. New Zealand.
He's a New Zealander.
Apparently, I don't know if that's true.
He's terrible.
What's going on here?
Are you?
Dude, join me. What's happening? I look like the remnants of the Play-Doh that someone just squeezed out for a second.
You look rough. You look rough, Troy. You look rough.
Right? A little bit?
Yeah.
That means I'm working for something. I did spray my ass.
You look like you got a blowout. I just, for some reason, have bits that are just sort of, what the fuck is this?
I don't know.
Me and Austin are sat here like, I also care about my hair.
I got a different haircut for the first time in 20 years, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. It's just short.
That one there.
It's just short hair out.
That one right there, right? That hair got short.
Yep. Anyway, David Fincher was in the shower.
Are you up to speed on The Boys, Alanah and Mike?
No, and I would love to be. I stopped watching it because I was eating while the episode with the milk thing happened, and then I didn't want to watch it because I was eating, and then I just never went back. But I really enjoyed it.
It's not one to eat a meal with, to be fair.
Right.
Very rarely is it an episode you want to... Yeah.
Big Mouth is the same way. I can't watch that show while I eat, but I love that show.
Oh, yeah, it's not a fucking
Big Mouth?
that show.
Big Mouth.
Big Mouth. Great one. That's a great plain one.
That's the cartoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm watching
I
Human
never heard of
Resources
it.
right now as well.
It's like a
It's on
Netflix
Netflix.
cartoon. Yeah, I never watched it.
It's a coming
Fucking
of
in every
age.
frame.
Yeah, it's a coming of age sort of metaphors type story, where it's about growing up through this very wildly sort of bizarre lens, and I think it's at its best. It's absolutely amazing, and the clever characters that they create to represent the neuroses of young kids, like the hormone monsters and things, are truly genius.
Shame demon.
I'm looking at some art. So there are literally like monsters in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
like
so now they've done a
Imaginary
spin-off
Friends
show
kind of thing.
of where it's kind of like not The Office where everyone's breaking the fourth wall, talking to camera or anything, but it's the hormone, all of those hormone monsters at their place of work, and so it's more focused on them than it is the kids. But
Gotcha.
to their credit, the thing that I love about what they're doing is
totally. Well, go ahead.
Huh? No,
Never mind,
it was
go ahead.
because they're really having a conversation about they're really having a conversation about what kids are dealing with. Like there's one episode in
about growing
season
up.
1 that deals with a girl having her first period at the Statue of Liberty, and the way that they're talking about sexuality, I think, is incredibly important.
Oh yeah, and it
because
covers it hits like seemingly everything. There's a coming
Everything.
out story. There's like the kid who's discovering he's got his best friend who's just like pure horn dog, absolute like depraved monster, and he doesn't feel that, and he's kind of like, is there something wrong with me that I'm just not this horny degenerate all the time? And like it really, because the cast is big enough, they explore just the awkwardness of growing up so well.
But it's an adult show, right? It's not for younger
extremely.
audience. Gotcha.
It's fucking in every frame.
Gotcha.
God damn, you're fucking horny.
It has some of the most sort of vile things I've ever
Dude.
seen animated in my life. It takes South Park and is like, just wait.
Hold our beer.
Yeah, it's pretty. But the voice acting, Nick Kroll, and like
there's 8 characters, I think.
Yeah, the best of which is what's her name? You know, the one that's like, how dare you?
This one. It's all characters that it's using voices of characters he's done in like his stand-up and stuff. I really like this one.
Why am I blanking on her name?
God.
So funny because there's like he'll do it. It's where it's kind of feels like, you know how when you're driving and you're sort of very gently on the gas pedal, but you kind of shift positions and you slip and you accidentally hit it and you kind of rev the car. You ever had that experience? You just unexpectedly a little burst. That's how she talks. Where it's like, are you walking to the store? And there's like these little bursts of loudness randomly that kills me every time. It's just
I feel like that's got to be a thing that like probably Rick and Morty pioneered in some way in voice acting of like.
I know that.
I think the premise there is that he's always drunk, right? It's.
He goes in and drinks like a gallon or drinks a liter of Coke. Like he has a liter of Coke with him as he's recording.
Justin's speech is very like straight. When you meet him outside of that, his voice is like just very not monotone, but like very steady. You wouldn't know that was him from just meeting him. It's wild.
But he also like, I mean, you can tell that guy's
so much too.
Yeah,
Rick and Morty.
He's got
so brilliant.
Show is so brilliant.
But yeah, The Boys season 3 that just wrapped up.
Haven't even started. I'm saving for a plane.
I really do.
It is.
Why is it not for a plane?
So
the writing got
better.
Right? That's not. I was saying that to someone earlier. The writing got really good this season. The stuff about like, I'm going to be very vague. Family, just as a general theme, is so well handled across the show. Well, the way they touch on that theme everywhere is amazing.
Yeah, even the way they did season 2, I was like, holy shit. Like my boy Carl's great in it. They gave him some shit to do.
I feel like there's not a single weak link in this season for me. It even the kind of B story stuff that's not the focus, but is sort of it doesn't feel B by the end. Yeah. You're like,
well, that's the key to a great B story is that it rhymes with and supports your A.
It's the A of its own B.
Yeah, I felt like I really did like season 1.
How? I've just loved every minute of this show.
I liked season 1, but I was worried that the show was using gore and edginess as a crux, and that it
one
would
feels
continue
juvenile
to do so.
For sure. It feels like a very teenage kind of thing.
A crutch, probably. Who cares? What words? Who needs them?
No, that's a very important distinction. Like, is it using it as like as a foundational element in the premise, or is it using it as just a kind of a?
No, I felt like it was like using it to make people pay attention. Like, some writers just write
pure
for shock value.
Yeah,
exactly.
It feels like a teenager trying to get attention that first season. It's a shame because I think it grows into something. It grows beyond that for me as it goes on. I think once they realize what they're trying to say, I think it gets a lot better.
I don't actually fully agree with that. To me, the violence always felt in service of the message. The Cavalier, these superheroes, there's no checks and balances for these people. They exist so outside of any of the normal civilization, and it's so impossible to hold them accountable. You have to see the casual nature with which they can just absolutely obliterate life and not give a shit. And I feel like the more visceral.
Well, it's also the source material.
Well, yeah, that too.
But I think people, I definitely went in assuming it was going to be hardcore superhero rather than what I think it is, which is like horror. It's horror it's satirical horror. It feels like,
I think it's become that. Like, from what I can tell about season 3, again, haven't watched it yet, I will catch up. It's that it
has its moments.
Season
satire.
1 had that too. Season 1, she
that
absolute
fear that all the characters have for the heroes, for the superhero characters, like, that feels like horror to me. That tension you feel when Homelander's in a scene,
horror
right?
sense.
Yeah, it's that creeping dread, that sense of just how scary it's almost Lovecraftian, right? Like how bad it would be to be around gods, like how dangerous that would be, how terrifying.
And season 3 takes that to such new heights. Holy crap! There are scenes where there's two characters just in a room talking, and you're like, I can't breathe. This is just,
and that's what I'm talking about with the horror. That's why it feels like horror to me. It feels that's how I watch it. I would say,
but not psychological thriller.
Say again.
But not psychological thriller. Like you would put it into the horror category.
It's a little potato for me.
Where would you put Silence of the Lambs, right? Like I said that earlier to someone, like
psychological thriller, not a horror.
So I would
Friday the 13th.
It's semantic, yeah. Okay. I would say
what
Homelander, what the guy doing Homelander's doing, that guy is doing. He's the scariest character since Hannibal Lecter, like 100%. And where that goes as it goes on, and how terrifying he is just amazing. Like,
sure.
I don't know if I've seen anything else that really does that, where you're frequently scared of multiple characters. I have trouble thinking of anything else that you'd be like, oh my god.
Friends.
Aside and Seinfeld.
Friends. Terrified of Ross.
Yeah.
Guy's unhinged.
No, it's definitely like I liked season 1 probably a little bit more than you did, Mike, but I was worried that the things that I found that felt performatively edgy about it, that I would end up just finding more grating as the show went on. But it seems like it's only got better and better.
I think it grows. I think that stuff stays about where it is, but I think everything else comes up so much that it's like there's imagery, and everyone watching this who's seen it, there's imagery in the first episode of the 3rd season that will live with everyone who's seen it for the rest of their lives. It's the most horrific horrible thing ever.
But it's hilariously horrible.
But it's hilariously terrible. 100%. It's that teenage thing of getting, look at me. But then there's so much other cool stuff there that for me, I can, I still enjoy that.
That's what I would think would be an important distinction of like anything.
I just put a horrible image in Austin's head and everyone listening to this.
I can't stop thinking about it.
I'm very curious because then he laughed too, and I'm like, damn, okay.
But that's the thing. It is funny. It's played for laughs for sure.
It's like Tarantino, like remember in Pulp Fiction where
Tarantino's never done that scene.
No, but he would. He
would 100%.
Yeah. That you remember the scene in Pulp Fiction where they're in the car and they accidentally shoot the guy in the back, and then the rest of the scene. Yeah, there's like brain in Samuel L. Jackson's hair for the rest of that scene, and it's hilarious because it's just so fucked up. That's where The Boys goes that I find delightful.
That's what I think keeps it out of horror, and that's why, like, if you laugh, it's not horror.
Well, there's a lot of very campy
that's
horror.
An interesting. Yeah,
okay.
I feel like
I laugh at Evil Dead, but that's for a totally
Evil
different.
Dead is comedy.
It wasn't meant to be, though. It was.
No.
He was doing that shit in earnest.
Are you
Evil Dead
identifying
2,
slasher as being horror?
I would say Hellraiser is horror. Serpent in the Rainbow is horror.
What's Cabin in the Woods?
I agree with both of those.
Cabin in the Woods
is horror, I would say.
But it's also Joss Whedon doing his thing where he is intentionally making tropes out of he's underscoring the cliches of those horror things.
It doesn't make it
and
not
making
horror.
it the conceit. Huh?
That doesn't make it not horror. I think that's just
but
a
did
horror
you
comedy.
you laugh like when he flew off the motorcycle? Everybody laughed. So I just don't think it's.
It's so funny. When I started watching that movie, I didn't know it was Joss Whedon, and I was like, "Oh, I hate these stupid characters. They're so cliche." And then I was like, "Oh,
that's the perfect way to watch that movie, though. That sounds like the perfect.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
That was Joss wanting to make a movie with his friends. That's exactly what that was. It was like, I just want to make a movie with friends. How can I do this really cheaply? He's like, you could do a horror movie in a cabin. He's like, got it.
I don't think are you suggesting that laughing is somehow disqualifying for the label of horror?
This is 100% a subjective definition based upon me, right? But I would say that the intention of horror is not to bring levity, but it's to bring a constant sense of foreboding and fear.
Or shock or disgust, I think.
So from my perspective, it's
shock or
also
disgust,
about catharsis, though, right? It's also about surviving. It's like a roller coaster. It's surviving fear. But I would expect that to often include joy, right? Like the other side, the laugh, the same reason we laugh when we're uncomfortable. That kind of release of awkward tension feels like part of the horror. Most horror movies, I feel, have a moment where the audience will laugh or enjoy something in that way. I think a lot of like gore, for example, like the heightened gore is often done to entertain and to amuse or like, you know, get a reaction other than you're not meant to feel viscerally disgusted at gore in horror movies
for 90 minutes. Right.
Yeah, you couldn't. That would be, you know, it's not real, right? Like that's the tension. That's why I have so much respect for people who do horror well. I can't imagine the level of precision that's required to create that emotional space for an audience.
Exorcist. What would you call that?
That's horror.
That's got to be horror.
Quintessential.
So
that's hilarious because she says your mother sucks cocks in hell, which is naturally very funny. But at the time, supposedly was horrific.
I think that just from my angle, at least, having written music for a lot of low budget horror in my life, the span of emotions across just those projects is so wide that horror is a big tent, because you have films that are like Silence of the Lambs, which, although I don't consider that horror, to me that's a drama. And I don't really know where the line falls necessarily in a sort of scientifically precise way, but it doesn't feel like it's
definitely
designed...
not horror because it won an Oscar, and you can't win an Oscar if you're a horror. Oh no, it didn't.
Has a horror movie ever won an Oscar?
I don't think Silence of the Lambs won the Oscar, right?
Well, I know that The Omen won the Oscar for Best Score. So if you count that,
I think a horror movie has never won. No one cares about soundtracks, Austin. I think that.
Shut up, Austin. Nobody cares.
I don't think a horror movie's ever won Best Picture.
I would believe. I mean,
I think Jordan Peele won the Best Screenplay for Get Out.
And Get Out is brilliant and horror. I still think Hereditary
also has laughs in it, right? Still has comedy in there because it's Jordan
good
Peele,
point.
So.
I think you can have both.
I think it's actually my like one of the closest directors I work with is this guy Paul Solet, who the first movie we did together was called Grace. That was a film that played at Sundance, and we had people faint at our premiere. But there's also moments in that movie that are funny. And there's a thing that he does at the end. I don't even want to say what it is, because it's the only time I've ever seen somebody get a joke out of their credits. That the audience actually clocks top to bottom. which was great. And it was the perfect way because the movie is so unnerving. And like I said, 2 people fainted in earnest, and it happened at other screenings too. But the very last thing that everybody at that theater at Sundance remembered was laughing. And it was like a relief. It was like, oh my God, like this is like a weight off. And that was exactly why he did it. And so I think Paul, the director, he would be the first to say comedy has always been interwoven with horror, because if you can disarm people, you can also get them harder. If the goal is to shock, or if the goal is to drive home
on your guard.
something, yeah,
you're resetting the discomfort every 5 minutes. It's a Resident Evil safe room, and then you have the opportunity to ramp it back up again, which I do think The Boys does very well. Is like has moments where you actually feel safe, which I feel like makes the tense moments more terrifying.
Especially because that show's not afraid to pull the rug out at any moment,
right?
Anytime.
Like like the way Game of Thrones started, where the safe moments were actually falsely safe.
Yeah.
Because at any moment they might not be.
Driving down the road going super fast, no matter how fast you're going, you eventually will become normal, and you'll feel like you're going 60 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, whatever. Might do the conversion for our UK.
That's why Troy kills people.
I think that's like 10,000 kph or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
I got a list
right.
of scary movies that have won Academy Awards. They're obviously for different things, but it looks like Silence of the Lambs did win Best Picture.
I've just received this
word
from my assistant.
Yeah,
we have a list of Oscar-winning thrillers. Misery?
Oh, Misery's definitely
Misery?
horror, yeah.
I
Which
know,
I have
I'm
not
wrong.
seen, and
Psychological
I feel like I
thriller.
should.
Why? Because she swings an axe? That makes it horror?
Written by
What
Stephen
makes it
King.
horror?
Spoilers.
Checkmate, motherfucker.
Written by
Shit.
Stephen
But
King.
does that make
yes, that means it's a horror movie. If it's written by Stephen King, it's a horror movie.
But what about
so
Green
does that mean
Mile
Shawshank?
and all that? Yeah.
Okay, Troy. How about Jaws is on the list? How about Jaws? Is Jaws horror? Jaws is lighthearted in a bunch of ways.
Guys. That's one of my favorite lines.
That's
Oh,
definitely
guys.
a funny movie.
The most
We're gonna
iconic
need
line from that is a comic relief line.
Right.
We're gonna need a
Is
bigger
Jaws,
boat.
Is Jaws not horror? I think Jaws is like quintessential horror. I think Jaws shaped horror.
Jaws invented blockbuster horror, basically.
Jaws is so horror.
Well, it invented the
Blockbuster,
blockbuster.
period.
Get your
Yeah,
hand out of
yeah.
my face. Get your hand out of my face.
I still haven't worked out how to do that properly. It's fine.
You have to hold it up
Blurry's
close.
better. You hold it up close,
Yep.
then my hand gets focused and my face doesn't.
Correct. It'll fix when you take it away.
Yeah, it's
You
not
let it
working.
focus on your hand, and then you pull it back, and it whatever. Jaws. Troy. Is it
Just
horror?
in solidarity, I'm gonna.
Yeah, I guess Jaws would go. If I'm thinking about reminding myself of the days of walking through Blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck, Austin? Spotify guys, you're missing out.
on Austin being blurry. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
Austin's
content
blurry.
you want.
I sometimes see Austin as a blurry person, and has nothing to do with my eyesight.
This is the Predator view of me now.
Play, watch, listen. Is it horror? Mike,
is
what
just-
the fuck?
It's just collapsing
It is.
into
Turns
juvenile.
It is horror.
We're all pressing all the buttons now.
I am actually currently. I feel like whenever I don't have to record the video, I have so much power. I'm entering a code for a video game to download right now. But nobody knows because you can't see my screen. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, appreciate you staying engaged in the conversation.
I asked you a question. Is Jaws horror?
I did. I would say that it was. I was saying. I'm trying to remember, like walking down the different departments in a Blockbuster, right? And like, if I was going to go to Jaws, hey, Greg, and he's like, hey man, I'm looking for Jaws, and he'd be like, oh, you're going to find that in the what section?
Horror.
Horror?
Sharks.
No.
I feel like, yeah, horror. I mean, especially at the time, it was so scary. It famously like made people stop fucking going to the beach for that summer.
Right.
So talk about scary.
Oh no, Mike Bithell jump scares this week.
Yeah.
I don't know
Like
how. I'm
Bithell,
trying to fix
jump
the Zoom
scares.
thing that I've done. I can't get my camera.
Also,
back
you're
to
very
life.
Well,
pink.
Now you broke
That's
it.
just my face. That's the gammon in me. It's
Now
not
look
so
what
good
you
around
did.
now.
Now look what
Yeah,
you did, you
I
little
think
jerk.
I think horror is probably of all the genres, it's one of the widest
Yeah,
It's
and
a
it has
swath.
a lot of subgenres.
fields. Yeah, exactly. Like there are horror films that are pure camp that are at no point are they scary.
Scream.
Well, but Scream, the very
Scream pretty
first
scary.
Scream had its moments of like actual like the audience,
Chasey, Scrat,
singing
But
in
are
a
we
theater.
just discounting like the kind of the slasher movie is just not horror? Is that what we're saying?
I think slasher's horror for sure.
I think slasher's a horror for sure.
Yeah.
I would, to me, that's quintessential horror.
It's just light. That's the point. It's like a psychological horror is inherently more scary. Like Psycho is a
That gets
vastly
under your skin
scarier
more,
movie to me.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's those things that they somehow tap into these kind of facts about life or about people, about human tendencies that
more
make
reflective.
you just go, holy shit. That's I think what makes The Boys also so special is I think Homelander is so understandable as a character. There's nothing about why he is the way he is that makes you feel like that's a leap. Where'd that come from? I just look at it and I go, everything about that is so relatable is not the right word, but it's just
real.
It's real. It's so with
It's human. His damage is human.
100%. Yeah, it's really, and that to me is just infinitely scarier than the kind of like scheming, like kind of world domination kind of.
His whole character is like so hinged on if anybody will at any point trigger one of his various insecurities. So you're walking around on a tightrope because somebody's ego is so fragile and they are a nuclear weapon at all times.
We've all known someone like that,
we
right? We've
totally
all experienced that.
100%. And that's so believable that you're walking around people all the time, such as Troy, whose egos are so fragile that they will just murder you.
He's killed, he'll kill again. That's all I'm saying.
Can't prove that.
It's definitely like a thing that I think is also made more scary by the knowledge that if you were in the situation having a conversation with him, that you could fuck it up. Where there are instances in horror that you don't feel that way.
I think
The
one
thing
of the
that I
things
think
that's
makes
brilliant
Homelander-
about 3
sorry.
is apologies. Series 3 100% does some connective tissue to kind of directly connect the way real people have experienced that kind of personality type every day to the reality. Like it goes for the jugular in terms of like it removes any vagueness about what that's referencing or what that's
Welcome to the spoiler cast of Play, Watch, Listen for The Boys.
We're not
That's
spoiling
great,
anything. Me and
because I
Austin
haven't
are being
seen it, so
so
it's-
careful.
No,
Yeah,
I know
you're
that's
being
the thing.
wonderful.
I so want to talk about it, but I
right.
need you guys to see it in earnest.
Here's
a question.
I need just a little while longer.
I could turn my headphones off if you want to actually
could just
talk
go.
about something specific.
I could just go.
Here's a question. Since we haven't actually really talked about games this episode,
Yes, we have.
what?
Didn't we?
Also, I never got through
Me
my
and you
Oscars
talked
list.
for a
Hang
little
on,
while
can I get
before
through
we
my
started,
Oscars list first?
but that's it.
Oh,
Rosemary's
yeah.
Baby.
Your Oscar
That's
list?
definitely a horror movie. Yeah.
Yeah, Rosemary's
I would-
Baby.
It's.
How is it not? What else would it be?
I would say. Well, okay. So retroactively, I would say it's a psychological thriller because it's not. There's one scary scene in it.
But
And
it's a payoff of a movie that's eating away at your
The
defenses. for
tension
so long.
is increasing the entire film. I feel like it's a horror. You're going to disagree with the next one probably even more than
No.
Black Swan.
Oh
Never
yeah,
seen
I
it.
don't consider that a horror.
I don't think I do
You
either.
haven't seen it? I feel like you would love
You haven't
that.
seen Black Swan?
It's a
man.
long story. I've never seen it. I had a girlfriend that was super weird about that. So she didn't.
Swans?
Well, it might be time to turn over.
Swans
a new
about
leaf.
swans.
Ballet. Aronofsky.
Never go to a lake.
I went.
Yeah, I mean, trust me. I understand it's a beautiful film, and I just
It's such a good screen.
I want to see it. I want to see it.
It wasn't just a beautiful film. It was a film that captured the self-destructive nature of artists in a way that I thought was better than I'd ever, at least at the time, I remember feeling I've never seen that captured. The seductive nature of your art consuming you to the degree that you don't even realize how self-destructive you're being. I remember thinking this
So
movie
good.
captured that better than I had ever, like, you think of, there's been a lot of great films about art, Amadeus and these kinds but this was one where it's about the
been
sort
one.
of almost like the toxicity in a way of the creative impulse. It blew me away. I felt like I haven't seen it since the time I saw it in the theater, but I remember I also saw it at the ArcLight, and I remember thinking it was the loudest I've ever heard a movie in my life. I walked out of that sort of rattled by the visceral impact of it too. But it's still
Also, I
wouldn't call
think
it
you're
horror.
confusing. I think you're confusing the great movie made about Amadeus with Beethoven, and that being Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure,
There you go.
Damn, you're right.
It's not really
Now,
about
is that
him.
a horror? That's a horror.
That's a horror.
It's
Definitely.
existential.
Trapped in time.
Aliens.
Horror.
Aliens.
Aliens or Alien?
So, yeah, I think the classic distinction is
That's
aliens.
a-
not
Aliens
action
didn't
film.
win an Oscar.
That's an action movie.
That's an action movie.
Aliens was nominated for score. James Horner had 2 weeks to write.
Nobody
that score.
cares.
There's
It was
someone listening
awarded-
on the show who cares.
It was awarded
That's some
best
classic
visual effects.
schoolyard bullying.
Do they,
I
did
established
they
a
give
rule
your
that you're just
award
being weird.
away
That's amazing.
during a commercial break? Nobody cares.
It got best visual effects, best sound editing.
For Aliens?
For
That always
Aliens.
happens with those movies. It's always like Transformers will get visual effects and sound design, and it'll make $1 billion. You know, the Marvel movies have started to, like, you know, you
edged
saw,
in.
you saw like Black Panther was actually getting wide nominations, but typically the very like summer mainstream would always get technical nominations and
Yeah.
nothing else.
I mean, now they do costume for Marvel. I just want this fucking hair. I just want to I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, The Fly.
Horror.
The Cronenberg.
Wait. The original one or Jeff Goldblum?
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, Cronenberg one. What'd that win for? Like costume or something?
Special effects?
At least special
Best
effects.
makeup.
Yeah.
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 Which makes
Yeah,
sense.
makeup. I
That's the
said
thing you think
costume,
of,
but I
yeah.
was picturing, yeah. You know who scored that movie?
No one cares.
No.
Go on.
But still, set aside the lack of caring and indulge the intellectual
not know.
curiosity.
Can't.
Same person who scored Silence of the Lambs. And they are very, 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 very famous for a score that is as opposite of those. This was a guy who, for 20 years, was one of the most well-known composers in the world of horror. He also did all of Cronenberg's films: *Existence*, *Crash*, not the like the drama about interweaving lives or whatever, but
The sex with cars
the
one.
sex with car accident wound movie. Yeah.
What?
Don't Google it,
Dude,
Lana.
dude,
Just
there was
stay
2
away.
Crash movies.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. Do
Wasn't
not
that
worry
first
about
one?
it.
Wasn't it with what's her name? She has everything she says. She talks like this. I want to have sex in the back of the car.
James Spader.
Yeah, I think Spader is in that. I can't remember.
100%.
All right. I'm worried.
People get off.
No guess on.
There are questions that don't need answering, Alanah.
I have
It's
no
fine.
idea, Austin.
Stay away. You're fine.
Beethoven.
Yes.
Nailed
Oh,
it. First guess. Wrap it
It's
up.
always interesting. It's always interesting. As someone who's so overwhelmingly known for horror, but actually they're one of the most famous composers in the world now for something that's as opposite as that, as you can imagine. I always found that.
Oh, wait, I got it. Was it? Gonna make new horror movie.
He was never known for horror.
Gonna do
Go on, Austin. Tell us.
Troy's version could be.
Howard Shore, known for Lord of the Rings.
Sure. Oh no, a different person.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
He did all. He did The Fly. He did Silence of the Lambs.
Which
he
makes
did-
sense
Wow.
that Jackson would hire a horror composer, right? That makes sense.
Actually, the
Why?
reason why was because Howard Shore visited the set while they were filming with an annotated copy of the book and basically showed that he was singularly obsessed with Lord of the Rings and made it very clear that they were not just going to get some guy doing a gig, but they were a guy who's prepared to give it all, because it was also
He
not
came
an
in and
easy
goes,
gig.
"You have my sword."
And he did a
Basically,
great
yeah.
job. He did a great job.
It's a beautiful soundtrack. Yeah.
Yeah, there were
Fascinating.
yeah, he won 3 Oscars for that gig.
For the first movie,
is unusual,
he won
right?
3 Oscars.
Well, it's not unusual
so
when you
good.
have a runaway hit if you write a song, which he wrote songs for all 3 films, and he won song and score for the third one and score for the first one. And it's
Michael
not that
Bolton
uncommon.
also wrote one, and it just never.
Cutting Room Floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a hobbit, and I got big feet. I'm gonna go so far.
I feel like that's
Take
viable.
back that ring. It was so good. Oh, I fucking love it.
The Omen.
I already called that one out.
I
Good
apologize,
read.
Austin. My apologies. Austin already called that.
Here's a hilarious thing though. So Goldsmith's
I've never seen it.
theme. Goldsmith's theme to The Omen is called Ave Satani, Latin for Hail Satan, and it's a choir literally singing Ave Satani. It's so good, so iconic. It's in fucking South Park. But the crazy thing is, in a world that I will never understand this, Jerry was nominated and won for Best Score. But he was also nominated and lost for Best Song for the theme Ave Satani. If you look up Best Song nominees in 1976, the theme to The Omen is one of the nominees. And I've always thought that was the weirdest fucking thing ever.
Because technically it's a song because there's vocals.
I guess it was a very odd...
Well, that's like when they go, hey, this is going to win for Best Musical or Comedy. You know what I mean? Like they you know, like what was the weird one?
Which is
was it like
nonsense anyway, right? So
yeah, it was like Dallas Buyers Club nominated for Best Musical or Comedy. Whatever it was. So it's like.
Have you listened to his book? Have you listened to what's it called? Green Lad.
This guy. Yeah.
Green Lad. It starts with him on the audio book of Greenlight is incredible because it starts with basically him coming on and I can't do the voice, you can. Basically just saying, I did this in a weekend. It's fine. And then the thing just starts and it's amazing. It is genuinely. There are bits where he slips up. There's bits where he just starts giggling his own joke and carries on. It's the best audiobook I've ever listened to. I love it so much.
Really?
There's also some good kind of folksy wisdom in there. It's quite good.
That's how I felt about Still Foolin' 'Em. I think that's what it's called. Or Foolin' 'Em, maybe just on its own. But it's Billy Crystal's memoir, essentially. And like every other chapter, he reads in front of a live audience. And I remember he went on the Daily. This was from like 12 or 13 years ago. He went on the Daily Show at the time to promote it, and he mentioned that. And I had never bought audiobooks before. I always just bought regular books. But when I heard that, I was so intrigued that it was back in those days. You had to buy like the 4-disc thing and put it in the car.
Please insert disc 2 to continue the program.
But his book
would have been cassettes, right?
So it was so beautiful. Like his stories about Muhammad Ali and his all of his experience working as not just an actor but as a stand-up and all. Like I was blown away. I was never some big Billy Crystal fan, but I found his story. That book was amazing. Like I love.
He played a mime in Spinal Tap. Like it's.
Believe me, there's plenty of things you can love about his. I always liked. I haven't seen it since it first came out, but I remember liking that. What's that movie where the whole thing is the friends around the dinner table talking about him and this girl's like love story, and Forget Paris. That's what that's called. Did you ever see that one?
Yeah, but Forget Paris is about
the whole movie is like them telling their friend's story.
VHS tape.
Oh yeah.
Like Billy Crystal and all that is in flashbacks through that movie.
Sure.
And anyway, I said, "Are you done, Alanah?" Because I said like 15 minutes ago, I have a video game question, and you said, "Let me finish with the Oscars."
List is done.
Okay,
go ahead.
I wanted to ask because you said. You were talking about the walking on eggshells, anxiety, Homelander thing. And I found myself wondering, I can only personally think of one scene in a game that had that feeling for me of like...
Ave Satani?
No, just pure, simple dialogue being absolutely unnerving. I
think the scariest line in any video game ever that still gives me chills when I play it is in PT.
God.
The radio says, "Look behind you," and there's nothing behind you. But every time it gives me fucking chills.
Spoiler, I was going to play it this afternoon.
Well, how? You can't even download it. It's gone.
He has
his
Hideo
play it on
Kojima
your PlayStation that you don't.
No, he stole yours. He stole your like archive.
I have
PS3
friends.
or whatever that you want.
I have friends.
I think
Hold on.
Wolfenstein
I won't do that
comes
joke.
to mind as being pretty unnerving.
Which one? What?
Wolfenstein. I feel like the New Order I found to be pretty fucking unnerving.
The scene with Hitler on Venus.
New Colossus.
New Colossus.
Wow, what the way they did that was so unexpected.
One of the best scenes I've ever seen in any video game, and it was so.
Those games are great.
It was so like it was the most emotionally complicated scene because he was such a like enfeebled, busted old man.
Disgusting.
He's pathetic. Yeah, and you have this weird. You're like, is this game making me feel bad for literal Hitler?
I bet
amazing.
you the meetings where they would have discussed what they were going to do with Hitler, like because once you have Hitler, it's so easy to just make a screaming German. but they didn't.
Well, that's
do that.
why, like, Man in the High Castle did a good job too of like what happens when Hitler gets old. And Hitchcock was the one who says the best villain is one that you can empathize with. And to make an empathetic villain, that's why Norman Bates is one of the best villains ever, because you just feel sorry for him. I was going to say the same thing very much with Homelander, is that regardless, you still want him to be your friend.
You don't by season 3.
I was gonna say I don't think I'm there anymore.
Either you don't want him to know that that you exist, or you hope that you're his friend,
or you want to be on his good side. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like it's somehow it's better to be the devil's pet than his enemy.
Sure.
So,
yeah, you'd still want him to like you, which is a very complicated thing. Austin, what was your pick?
It was that you mentioned Wolfenstein and you grabbed it. It was that
no way.
That Hitler
so
scene.
Cute.
I know that Hitler scene was for me. I just found myself thinking the closest analog I can think to those kinds of Homelander moments where you're just in a scene and it just feels like it's lit matches in all it's unlit matches in all directions, and you're just sitting there playing with flint, and you're going, this is gonna explode. I just that scene really because it was. That whole second game.
I felt
just
that way with the both of them though.
up.
Like New Order does that too. Like New Order has a lot of stuff where even after the choice at the very beginning, where what's her name, Fraulein? I don't remember what her actual name is. Enzo,
Something like that.
The
evil Ankle. Ankle. I think it might be
Ankle. It sounds right.
Yeah.
Dr. Woman. Dr. Ness.
She's just like. I've had this like criticism of a lot of fiction for a really long time.
New Order books downstairs. God damn it.
Sure it is.
End of an era.
I'll run
and grab it.
So many villains in comic books and movies used to just be Hitler. They all used to just be Hitler. Like some just completely unashamedly. They were like, just make it evil, world-ending, bad guy, genocide, done. Unrelatable, evil. And I think things have gotten a lot more
leather.
nuanced.
Done.
They do that a lot too. Like things have gotten a lot more nuanced, and I feel like the way Wolfenstein tackled the Nazi bad guys was like so uncomfortable. And yeah, it's just creepy. The way they use the sexuality for ankle as well. Oh, just so unsettling. Those games are fucking awesome.
They really were. They had Spear of Destiny and Wolfenstein 3D are among my very, very, very first like seminal gaming experiences, installing off of like 10 floppy disks onto a like IBM 8088 that could barely handle
is that ATA
8088 and
nobody?
It was
I got it.
Thank you.
I picked up what you put. It's a Star Wars.
I saw
Wars
it.
joke.
I clocked it.
Just didn't care.
There you go. Little minor quasi redemption.
Interesting.
Right.
Irene Engel is the secondary antagonist of Wolfenstein: The New Order and the main antagonist of Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. It's weird. I remember her being the main antagonist of The New Order. Maybe she just stood out more than... I know it's like a bald guy that you fight in a mech suit.
Yeah, that's zero.
There is that.
The art direction, though, like that's why I've got the art books. Is just the way they captured that aesthetic and then carried it forward into like the 60s, right? The New Order first one set. Yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing.
It was it was really, and that was one where, the first one was hardly aspiring to narrative depth, and the fact that they and there've been other sequels. There were a few other.
You forget how good that first one was. Like they do an Auschwitz scene, right? In the first person. That's bold. Like,
oh yeah, no one ever does that.
Essentially misguided, even. Like it's like that's a
in the very original game.
Oh, sorry, no, I mean in New Order. You mean back in the the original kind of. Oh,
yeah, no, I mean that's what I was saying.
Yeah, that first one, no.
When they remade it, when it was like getting rebooted, or it's actually not a remake, it's technically kind of a sequel because it takes place after the events of the original games, but
after the castle,
Yeah, it's one of those you just thought, these were always just kind of like Nazi killing power fantasy, very basic shooters with, that were not basic is
some were good, some were bad.
Yeah,
like all great.
But they were normal in a sense, at least narratively. They didn't aspire to anything, I think, super groundbreaking. And I hate to say that because for all I know,
I mean,
that was the thing that had
they're
to get
iconic.
Cut,
but there's everyone hated fucking Romero right after Doom came out because everyone was like, well, how am I going to beat Doom? And I feel like Wolfenstein is so often just paired as being like right next to Doom because they were so similar. And
well, especially in the beginning, right? They've clearly kind of diverged a little bit more since.
Definitely completely different now. What Doom and Wolfenstein are doing couldn't be more different.
And the fact that Doom,
I gotta bounce. I just realized what time
calling
it is.
you to join him in the shower.
The worst horror of all.
If Dave is like, the water's getting cold. I'm like, I understand. He needs a towel.
I still don't know the context of this story.
There's
very little context to this story, to be honest.
Hardly. Go watch The Offer.
The twist.
Very much the original Wolfenstein of stories, this one. Mike,
go watch The Offer. I'll go watch The Boys. Alana,
I just watched $1 Million Baby, and prior to watching it, I thought that it was a movie about like a baby version of Richie Rich.
Did you that was the original pitch.
Amazing. It wasn't the comedy pitch I expected. It's one of the most depressing films I've ever seen for no reason.
It's a baby worth $1 million. Now listen.
They don't even say it or reference it in the film.
There's no point where they turn to camera and say, wow, that's $1 million baby.
$1 million baby.
But how do we get that in the script?
I just thought that movie was so fucking depressing, and I went, why?
That's a lot.
Why did she have to lose her leg as well? Why? It just doesn't seem necessary.
Well, one
oh
thing
my
we
God.
have to do
that
here.
movie in years.
It doesn't, and it left me with nothing other than, wow, life's shit. Like, oh my God. Anyway.
Like, how do we get an Oscar? It's like, put her through all of it.
All of it,
him
make it real
too,
sad.
And him too.
He's blind also. Every fucking one of them. Like, it's so obvious.
Is it a horror movie?
Is it a horror movie?
No.
I'm going to go
yes. The Boys season 3
This podcast format
probably is. All right, I'm Alanah Pearce. I'm a video game writer. That's Rebecca. He's a video game actor. That's Mike Bethel. He's a video game director. That's Austin Winter. He's a video game composer. Thank you for watching Play Watch Listen, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.